안녕하십니까 여러분, 돌콩입니다. 여러분들은 잘 사는 삶 혹은 좋은 삶의 기준이 무엇이라고 생각하시나요? 많은 사람들은 오랫동안 행복한 삶이 곧 좋은 삶이다 라고 믿어왔습니다. 그래서 우리는 소확행 같은 말을 많이 듣기도 했어요. 소박하지만 확실한 행복, 그리고 행복은 강도가 아니라 빈도다 라는 이야기를 많이 듣기도 합니다. 이러한 말들에는 어떠한 전제가 깔려 있습니다. 삶의 기본 상태는 행복하지 않다라는 전제이죠. 그렇기 때문에 우리는 작은 것에도 행복을 느낄 수 있는 그 마음의 민감성을 가져야 하고, 또한 행복을 더 자주 느낄 수 있도록 노력해야 한다라는 말이 되는데요. 그리고 살아보면 알게 되죠. 삶에는 피할 수 없는 어려움들이 있구나. 우리는 살면서 내가 소중하게 생각하는 것들을 잃어버리고 몸이나 마음이 아프기도 하고 내 의지와 상관없이 흔들리는 경험을 또한 하게 됩니다. 그렇다고 해서 그 삶이 나쁜 삶인가 혹은 잘 살지 못하는 삶인가 라고 묻는다면 또 그건 아니거든요. 행복이라는 그 하나의 기준만으로는 우리의 삶을 다 담아낼 수 없다는 생각을 하게 됩니다. 그래서 많은 심리학 서적들이나 자기계발서를 보면 행복을 넘어서서 의미 있는 삶에 대한 강조를 하죠. 의미 있는 삶이란 대체로 방향 감각이 있고 일관성이 있으며 목표가 있습니다. 영향력도 있죠. 내가 무언가에 오랫동안 헌신하고 또 시간을 들여서 그 분야의 전문가가 되어서 판도를 바꿀 만한 논문을 쓴다거나 발견을 해내는 모습, 혹은 내가 아주 뛰어난 재능을 가지고 태어나서 많은 사람들에게 즐거움과 감흥을 줄 수 있는 운동선수나 예술가가 되는 모습을 상상할 수도 있겠죠. 그렇기 때문에 한편으로 의미 있는 삶은 때로는 무겁고 좀 크고 멀게 느껴지기도 합니다. 그래서 저는 오랫동안 해결하지 못한 숙제 같은 걸 마음에 가지고 있었어요. 나는 늘 행복한 것도 아니고 내 의미와 목적을 아직 찾은 것 같지도 않고, 그래서 저는 조금 더 열심히 살아야 되겠다라는 생각을 했던 것 같아요. 좀 더 성장을 해서 행복을 더 자주 그리고 작은 것에서 느낄 수 있도록 마음가짐을 배워가야겠다. 혹은 내가 무언가를 열심히 해서 사회적인 지위라든지 어떤 경제적인 기반을 더 탄탄하게 해야 하는 것 아닐까. 그러다 보니까 지금의 삶이 어떤 미완성의 삶처럼 느껴지는 부분이 있었어요. 그런데 좋은 삶, 잘 사는 삶의 제3의 기준이 무엇인지를 제시하는 책이 최근에 나와서 저는 아주 이 책을 인상 깊게 읽었습니다. 또한 이 책을 읽고 나서 오랫동안 마음속에 가지고 왔던 숙제가 이렇게 사라지는 느낌이었어요. 그래서 해방감도 많이 느꼈고 마음에 아주 큰 평안을 느꼈습니다. 시카고 대학에서 행복을 연구하고 계시는 시게히로 오이시 박사님의 Life in Three Dimensions, 우리나라에서는 인생은 행복으로 완성되지 않는다 라는 제목으로 최근에 번역 출간이 되었습니다. 과연 그 제3의 기준이 무엇인지 궁금하지 않으십니까? 그래서 오늘은 시게히로 오이시 박사님을 채널에 직접 모시고 그 제3의 기준에 대한 이야기를 나눴습니다. 저와 비슷한 생각을 해본 적이 있으신 분들이라면 오늘의 인터뷰에서 또한 박사님의 책에서 아주 큰 도움을 받으실 수 있을 거라고 생각합니다. 저 같은 경우에는 이 책을 읽고 나서 지금까지 내가 살아왔던 삶이 틀리거나 혹은 미완성이거나 혹은 열등한 종류의 삶이 아니라 그 나름대로의 아름다운 삶이었구나. 앞으로도 내 나름의 삶을 아름답게 갖고 가고 만들어갈 수 있겠구나 라는 그 용기? 자신감 같은 걸 얻었던 것 같아요. 오늘의 인터뷰 재미있게 봐주시고요. 시게히로 오이시 박사님의 인생은 행복으로 완성되지 않는다 또 많이 사랑해 주시기 바랍니다.
We know happiness is a one thing that we could talk about, that we are used to it. And another dimension I got to learn as I read more books in psychology or self-help or books like Man's Search for Meaning. Like meaning is another dimension that we could use to evaluate a good life. I learned that later on. What makes you feel like this framework is not enough, and how did you come up with this third dimension? What was not being explained?
So my first 20 years of career, I studied happiness and meaning. And studied out, of course, we thought meaning is very different from happiness. But it turned out that when you look at what correlates with happy life and what correlates with meaningful life, there are just so many overlap. And essentially, sort of the advice you can give to maximize happiness or maximize meaning became very similar. For happiness, it became a sort of the small happiness, that small joy you get from everyday life. So perhaps you want to sort of make sure who you like and spend as much as possible with a small number of good friends or family members or favorite neighbors or something like that, right? On the other hand, the meaning in life is very vague and difficult right? What does give you a sense of meaning? It's a really philosophical question and way more difficult than I think happy life. Meaningful life, I think essentially it boils down to whether you feel like you're making a difference in the world, whether you think there's a point to your existence. And when somebody appreciating your existence, of course, that gives you a sense of meaning. And that often comes from somebody you're taking care of. So if you're parents, then children, right? Without you, they cannot survive. So then you feel like you can easily justify your existence. So when you look at that and then think about, okay, if somebody says their life is happy and meaningful, is it the full life? Is it a complete life? And I asked that question myself essentially about 10 years ago in 2015 when I realized that, oh my gosh, I've been studying this for 20 years and what's, what did we learn and what we haven't learned. Essentially, I can say that, yeah, I'm pretty happy. I'm full professor at the University of Virginia, helping out my kids like Little League baseballs and, my students taking my classes and class size went bigger and bigger. So felt like my lecture is appreciated by students. But I couldn't say that my life is full or my life is complete. And I felt something is missing. And when I looked at the literature, I also realized that how narrow these factors that, are correlated with a happy life and meaningful life. What about adventure? Because these are like small joy, right? Small circle friend. We also admire people who live really dangerous, potentially adventurous life, or somebody who is challenging themselves, going way beyond their comfort zone. And essentially, what I realized was that the current metrics, so happiness and meaning, are not capturing that adventurous aspect of life or the aspects of life that, sort of concerned about the aesthetic appreciation, art, humanities. That was essentially just beginning for me. Like something is missing. What is this? And then I discussed with my graduate students. And initially we thought maybe something like experiential richness, the richness in terms of experience. But we also realized that when you say experiential richness, that sounds like a first-hand experience only. Some people staying home can read books, watch documentaries, and so forth, and still really have a rich inner life. So we changed it to psychological richness to capture both vicarious experiences as well as the first-hand experiences.
So you mentioned exploration, experience, adventurous, that kind of things. When we talk about psychologically rich life, what are other components when we talk about psychologically rich life?
I think the psychological richness has also novelty. So how often do you engage in the new things? So as I said, happy life and meaningful life, you can really have that without having not much novelty. In terms of psychological richness, it is really about experiences and experiences that accumulate but also change the way you think about the world or the way you think about yourself. If you're doing the same thing again and again, it is kind of hard to get that new perspective. Perhaps the third important part is complexity. When you read something very simple, that could be joyous, but not necessarily deep or rich. So in order for you to feel some experience was rich, then it has to have complexity. Namely, it has to have some kind of up and down and thrills and fear and some kind of drama, right?
I like that complexity component a lot because I feel like it was normalizing the detour and mistakes and trial and error experiences. We feel like that's failure or that's just a process. And when we take too long time in the process, we feel shame. But actually, it's a part of life. It's a part of life lived.
Discovering a lot of new things in every turn. The more you have interesting turn, and then when you turn, the new scene, opens up in front of you. That is way more enriching than going back and forth, the familiar area. That's the basic idea. And who can tell interesting story, or whose life story is more interesting? Somebody who had a very elite and traditional path, or not even elite, just a very conventional life. Yeah, it might be give you a sense of social recognition and stability, but probably it's not very interesting to hear, like what happened. Whereas if somebody went to Taiwan or Vietnam, or already, it's very interesting. That's not something what you expect from this particular person. Right? I was in graduate school for 7 years. Okay, that's a necessary part of incubations that you need for at least my profession. Now I can look back and say, well, yeah, that was fine. I lived in a really terrible apartment. I really drove horrible car that needed fixing up all the time or couldn't drive for many times. Many embarrassing things that happened to me, and then really run out of money kind of situation. That's okay now, right? As long as it's good story. Right.
It's really interesting because I don't know happiness, meaning, and psychological richness, they may not be mutually exclusive, but having a story and sharing that story, I think that is the point to where those three dimensions kind of meet, because you do have your own story and you have fun. And then you share that with other people and connect, and they feel connected too, they feel understood. I felt understood after reading your story there. So, there is a meaning. You are making small or big impact on other people's life. And also, we are happy. We are laughing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, even the happiness, right? Happy events that happen to you, if you don't have anyone to share, that's really just not going to, last for a long time. I mean, savoring is very important, but it is very difficult to savor your positive experiences if you are not sharing with somebody and somebody is affirming that, positive events with you and celebrating with you. So, yeah.
So you shared about your English experience, and I do have a lot of them too, but we were embarrassed in that moment, right?
Sure.
We feel humiliated in that
Right.
moment.
Right.
One of my question is that, is a psychological richness something we can recognize while we are living the moment, or do we know that in retrospect?
That's an excellent question. And I think at the moment, our mind is so focused on that situation. So we were just reacting to that situation, embarrassment or anger
Humiliation.
or, humiliations and things like that. When the event is over, and at the end of the day, you might reflect upon. Or when something comes up, that stories, just reappear in your memory. And I think gradually, if the outcome was something positive and something that perspective changing or eye-opening about yourself, about the situations in the world, then I think it becomes psychologically rich. Of course, a lot of events that happen to us, we don't remember. At least some unusual events like this embarrassment, right? How often do we feel embarrassed? Not that often. Those are the type of unique experiences that stick in your mind. And if you can explain, or if you can sort of, this is the reason why it happened. And maybe there are out there people who have a similar experiences or even worse experience than this. That particular, the tiny experience becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And then it changes within you, and then sort of digest it and become, I think, a little more solid memory. So in the end, if you digest and think about it, and then you can see how you grew or how you overcome that kind of situation, then I think it becomes interesting stories. And then you can accumulate these unique experiences.
For sure. Like they call it like type 2 fun sometimes, right? So I'm a backpacker.
That's right, that's right.
and, yeah. Some people just like shiny sunny days and trip goes as you planned, then you finish really nice and grab a beer and that's a good trip. But trip to fun, you run into rain, thunderstorm, your
Right.
pants are wet and everything.
Yep.
And you come back and you look back and it's a good story to tell.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a story that you
exactly.
can be proud of.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's kind of perspective shifting, right? So while you
Yep.
are in the moment, you can remind yourself that
Right.
this is
Exactly,
like,
exactly.
yeah, exactly, right? So this is the point where I make that psychological richness in my life, that
Yep.
ripple.
I think that's really the mindset that, like, once you learn the fact that there is a type 2 fun, then you can remember that, oh, this might be eventually become a type 2 fun, then the momentary suffering will shrink a little bit. And
Yeah.
same way, the psych richness, if you remember that, then I think the anger or whatever emotion you have at the
Yes.
moment could be pushed
Yeah.
down a little bit now. Okay, that this is okay.
You mentioned that being playful in the
Exactly. Yeah.
book, and
Yeah.
we don't have room in our mind when we are angry, when we are lost. So we are
Right.
so mad and taking everything so seriously. But when you have that mindset, this is going to be part of type 2 fun, then, you know, you can step back.
Exactly,
And,
exactly.
yeah.
You can take some psychological distance from what's happening.
Yep.
I think the driving is a good metaphor because when we are driving, usually we have final destination in mind. And we
Right.
want to avoid traffic. We want to try to get there as quickly as possible. And essentially in everyday life, when you are working and doing something, that's what we are like trying to do, right? Getting things done. I have so many things to do today. Just get done as quickly as possible. That really constrains our psychology. Yeah, of course, productivity is important, but you have a space between your schedule, you know, every day here and there. You allow yourself to be spontaneous, you know, go knock on the door and try to, you know, have a coffee or conversation with your colleague or, you know, take a walk. I think we just need to become a little less obsessed with the productivities and efficiency and allow ourselves to be like kids and be playful, spontaneous. When you do that, then that's really high chance that you experience something
Yeah.
new, something unexpected.
We talk about the adventure and the importance of adventure and exploration to live the psychologically rich life. My question is about the role of stability here. So I can explain this. I thought that stability and adventure are the opposites. If
Okay.
you are too stable, you cannot be too adventurous. So you gotta go out and explore. As I was trying to explore, I feel like stability is a requirement for the adventure. You need psychological, financial, relation stability to be adventurous enough because you need a buffer when something happens. Because adventure innately means there is a threat and failure and something unknown. Problem is, if you focus on stability too much, you forget to go out. How should I deal with stability and how much stability is enough? How do I know that?
Yeah, that's really excellent questions. And some people, like Anthony Bourdain and like truly
Yeah.
adventurous people, I feel like maybe they just go out and do even without the sense of security or secure base. In
Special
general,
case.
yeah, I think that's totally exceptions. For
Right.
ordinary people, like we can look at the babies. When do baby explore the world? Well, that's when there is a mother nearby. And this is called secure attachment and secure base. So when the mother is around, then the baby feels secure. So explore the rooms and try to find some new toys and things like that. Psychologically speaking, you really do need the secure base in order for somebody to go out. If we emphasize the stability too much, then as you said, you just sort of forget that the secure base is for exploration, not just for the stability, the sake of the
Right.
stability itself. How do you know that? I think we forget. I think often we completely forget that. We just focus on the goal and then achieve and then forget like, why did we want this? So I think you have to remind yourself. And also, it's just really interactive, right? Dynamic. Like when these external shock happens, then how do you react? Do you just retrieve into the secure base and just do nothing? Or just react to this uncertainty and then just try to change what you had? That's where probably you want to be conscious that, hey, this is an opportunity, right? In Korean and Chinese too, the crisis is the danger, two Chinese character, right? The danger and the
Yeah.
opportunities. It is danger. You have to be careful, of course. But at the same time, this is a prime opportunity to make some change and go out and explore. Then you can do a lot of little changes within your stable life. For instance, if you take train to commute every day, then on the way to the work, you're too busy to change your commuting pattern. But on the way home, maybe you can get off a station earlier and then explore the neighborhood. When you just change a little bit, then you discover a lot of new things. Oh, I didn't know there's a used bookstore here and things like that. Yes, stability is important and stability is helpful for us to live productive and functional life. But at the same time, when we are just trying to maximize comfort, then we, of course, stay within the comfort zone, within this realm of secure base. That's when you want to make a little bit of change and then try to discover something new. So in my case, I have to lecture in the different buildings. And before writing this book, I was like, okay, what's the shortest possible step to check, right? Because, okay, do I have 5 minutes or 7 minutes, 10 minutes? Now I try to leave a little bit early so that I can take a detour. And then when you do that, when you have psychological space and mindset, then you discover actually, really beautiful, trees here, or like beautiful buildings, beautiful door.
I like this a lot. I thought exploration or adventure, I feel something dramatic or grand.
Right. Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
it doesn't have to be that big.
It doesn't. No,
right?
no,
It
no,
could
no,
be
no.
in our ordinary life, and also when there are opportunities out there, just be open, right? Like you don't have to make a dramatic movement there. Just be open to the new.
Exactly.
I really like this.